This is Terrence Andre Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions, coming to you talking about the millennials and particularly the life and how difficult times are now. And as much as the media tries to portray that everything is just much better, there's so much more opportunity, the economy is nowhere near what it used to be, especially for baby boomers and the generation after that. Everyone coming after that point, particularly millennials in this case, which are now making up the next largest demographic, have a specifically hard time. And this is not talked about enough. So I came across this article. I actually stumbled across it. 7 ways life is harder for millennials than it was for their parents. It's so powerful because of just the times that we're living in and really not having enough discussions about it. So I wanted to kind of dive into this article, put it out there. So if you question yourself, like, why is this? I just don't seem like I'm getting anywhere, especially if you're in that age range with the millennials. This article definitely points to it. And you're not crazy and you're not by yourself. You just have to try to think about things in a different kind of matter in the way things have always been going on. So when you're looking at baby boom parents or even parents who are a little bit not baby boomers, or a little younger than them, they still go by these old adages that this is the way that was applicable for them, and it's not really applicable for millennials or anyone really. It's only the generations really got the most benefit is really the baby boomers themselves. So let's kind of dive right in. I'm going to put the link in the description aspect so you can take a look at it at your leisure. Millennials are generally defined as people born between 1981 and 1996. In some ways, their life is harder than it was for their parents at the same age. Some ways, it's in every way. Many millennials are struggling financially and emotionally. Even online dating isn't as easy as it might seem. Even everyone likes to think that their life is hard, that their problems are bigger and less solvable than anyone else's. But for millennials, generally defined as people born between 1981 and 1986, that might be true. Many of these 20 and 30 somethings are struggling financially, emotionally, and even in the love department in ways their forebears weren't. Here are some of the most significant ways in which life is harder for millennials than it was for their parents. Millennials are less financially stable than previous generations were. Absolutely true. Business Insider Lynette Lopez reported on some disappointing data from Young Invincibles, a think tank based in Washington, D.C. Among white Americans aged 25 to 34, median income decreased by 21% between 1989 and 2013, though it increased among Latinos who started at a disadvantage. What's more, as Steven Ratner described in a 2015 New York Times op-ed article, millennials also have a lower net worth, $10,400 in 2013, than Generation X had, $18,200 in 1995. Perhaps the most startling findings come from a 2017 paper by social scientists at Harvard, Stanford, and the University of California, Berkeley. Economic mobility has decreased significantly since the 1940s. Now, that rings true, and that's worth repeating. Economic mobility has decreased significantly since the 1940s. Specifically, about 90% of Americans born in the 1940s out-earned their parents by the time they hit 30. That figure dropped to 50% amongst Americans born in the 1980s. The authors largely attribute the change to growing income inequality. Millennials are saddled with student debt, but a college education is more necessary than ever. It's just so sad that you punish people to become educated in a time where education is supposed to be so paramount, and you would think if you make it more affordable or less punishing, but that's not the case because we like collapses. We like things that become destructive. And I say this not to be facetious here. I'm just saying in truth, nothing changes unless a collapse happens. But even then, people have such a short-term memory, thinking that things are going to be better and somehow it's going to grow yourself out of these particular problems. Student loans are 1.5 trillion and counting, and it continues to grow. Ryan also says that college is becoming less affordable even as it's becoming increasingly necessary. According to Young Invincibles data, even college graduates with debt earn more than people without a degree. Yes, if you could get hired. Okay. Between 1993 and 2015, average tuition increased by 234%. And I want to go back to this. Not that I'm just putting on this rant about college education. At one time, I was worked in a nonprofit working as a student loan counselor, and I would see the staggering amount of debt that was taken on. And even if they had a degree, you have to be able to service that degree with some form of job. The income that was received for the jobs were not keeping up with the amount of debt that they're taking on. And this is before they can even get a car or any other aspect. So that's not enough talked about. But between 1993 and 2015, average tuition increased by 234%, when the inflation rate was just 63%. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 46% of grads left college with debt in 1995, compared with 71% in 2015. That makes it harder for millennials to hit those traditional adult milestones like having kids or buying a house. Millennial men are more likely to live at home with their parents than previous generations were. Pew Research Center data shows that among men ages 18 to 34, living at home with parents has been the most common living arrangement since 2009. Women in this age group are more likely to be living with a spouse or a romantic partner than they are to be living with their parents. That's interesting. The main culprit seems to be unemployment. Pew says research suggests that employed young men are less likely to live at home than unemployed young men, and employment among young men has decreased significantly in the past few decades. Living at home isn't a bad thing per se, but it can make it harder for millennials to feel independent. Millennials are overwhelmed by the dating pool. All right. In some cases, the more options we have, the less likely we are to make a decision at all. Social scientists call it the paradox of choice. Online dating is a prime example of the paradox in action. With thousands of potential dates just a swipe away, how can you choose just one? And if you do, how do you know you picked the right one? Sometimes that can lead to unhealthy relationships behavior. Inside, Kristen Sackett spoke to experts who said that instead of trying to work on a relationship when it gets rough, millennials may look to see what else is out there, something that's easier than ever to do now. Millennials feel as if they have to be always on at work. Technology has transformed the way we think about work. Instead of clocking out at 5 p.m., it's now possible to physically leave the office and sign back on at home. And a lot of young employees building their careers are doing just that. Randstad's 2014 employee engagement study found that 45% of employees feel pressure to respond to email work after hours. Millennials studies found are most likely to stay on during off hours. Millennials' self-image erodes in the face of ever-present social media. People have always compared themselves with their peers, and typically we think everyone else is happy while we're struggling. Social media, which wasn't available to generate X and baby boomers as young adults, has exacerbated this phenomenon. For example, one 2015 study found that passive Facebook use, scrolling through your news feeds without posting any comments, seems to make us feel worse about ourselves. The researchers say that's largely because of the end we feel when seeing everyone else's fancy vacation photos or adorable kids. Wow. See, even just the commentary here in this article shows that we're living in such a different time. And I always go back to the financials because I think that without economies, without finances, you can't do anything, especially in this day and age, even for when everything's based on experience and living for today instead of living for tomorrow. Millennials are shelling out more on childcare than previous generations were. So if they do have a kid, they're shelling out a lot more. Another report in Youngsville's highlighted in the Washington Post shows how the cost of raising a child skyrocketed in the past 50 years. The Post John Martush reports that in 2013, childcare and pre-college education made up 18% of the total cost of raising a kid, compared with just 2% in 1960. The fact that millennials are on average earning less and are more burdened by student debt only makes the situation more untenable. There you go, folks. If you're a millennial and you're reading this, then no, it's not your fault. We're living in unprecedented times, and we're not talking about this enough. Think of looking at different ways to generate extra income. Think about doing things differently. And when you listen to people who are older, your parents, just remind them that life is completely different than when there was. Because sometimes, especially when I'm sitting in a conversation with baby boomers, they still talk in these old adages and they reminisce about when life was easier for them, not realizing that every generation coming after has always been a lot harder. And they have most of the wealth, and they're already going through a lot of problems right now, as I mentioned a number of times in pinches. But want to keep this strictly on millennials. Look at different things and doing things, generating income. I'll be putting out a number of different videos on ways of increasing cash flow and in marketing and different aspects like that. So until my next video, if this video has been any value to you, please subscribe and leave some comments. I'm out.